Hi, welcome to Unscripted. This is Tyler from Anchor Reviews, and today I'm going to talk about the best movies of 2015, at least in my opinion. Now, I know there's some movies that I haven't seen yet, but I either I decided not to see them, or I'm just waiting for them to come to video. So pretty much, I'll probably make an updated video in the future. But for now, here's my top 10 movies of 2015. Number 10. Terminator Genesis. I know a lot of people didn't like this one, but despite the fact that it's not as great as the first two by James Cameron, I did enjoy it. Jai Courtney was not a very good casting choice at all. I mean, he looked nothing like Kyle Reese in the first one, and he's just a bad actor. I don't understand why this guy keeps getting parts. And he's also, maybe some people say oh, he's getting by his looks. And he's not handsome whatsoever. He's kind of ugly. But the fact they got Arnold Schwarzenegger back really made this movie. Well, the plot twist I was kind of mixed about, but I really didn't like the fact that they pretty much gave it away in the trailer and in the poster. So, what happened to Mystery, guys? Just what happened to Mystery? Number 9. Jurassic World. I liked that it was more like the first one. The characters were also alright, but yeah, I mean, the relationship between the two main characters, like Bryce Dallas Howard and oh man, his name just left me. Chris Pratt. I like their chemistry together, but I really didn't like the cliched greedy businessman. I just feel like it's a really bad cliche and one of the most worst options if you're gonna make a villain in a movie to do that, because they just come a dime a dozen nowadays. But anyway, back to another thing I liked about this movie. Like I said, I did like those more like the first one, because I feel like the problem with the second and third one was that they're trying too much to be way too different. And this one, although it was kind of a repeat of the first one, at least it was trying to go back to it, because we hadn't seen a movie that was like more of the first one. But anyway, the effects were good, and the climax was awesome. I mean, if I wrote this movie, that climax, what happened in it, was exactly what I would have wrote it. But anyway, moving on. Number 8. We Are Still Here. You might have not heard about this one, but it's actually pretty good for a horror movie, and it has a proper use of, gore and atmosphere. Now, this was a movie that I heard about somewhere online. They were, talking about this movie oh, it's actually pretty good. So I, watched it when it came to video around Halloween, and it was actually pretty good. I really did enjoy this one. I mean, one thing that this movie did a good job with when it comes to horror movies, I feel like a lot of scary movies nowadays really lack, is atmosphere. I mean, there's a good amount of it. There are times, there are gory stuff, especially at the end, but it does have great build-up when it comes to actually showing, basically dark environments, pretty much a sense of isolation, and other stuff. I really, really did like this. And another thing I did appreciate about this horror film is the fact that the main characters are actually older people. They're actually middle-aged. How often do you see a horror movie where the main characters are a lot older? Usually they're teenagers or young adults, but this one was actually pretty different because it actually had people who were a lot older. No, I recognize some people. I think there was Lisa Marie Smith who was in it. She was, in Mars Attacks. She used to be Tim Burton's girlfriend back in the 90s, and I'm trying to remember her name, but she was in Reanimated. That was another pretty good horror film. But anyway, but there's another scary movie that I thought was much better, and it's right up next. Number 7. It Follows. This is hands down the best scary movie of the year, and easily one of the best horror movies I've seen in the past, 5 years or so. At least one of the best ones. What I really love about this one, besides what I liked about It We Are Still Here, is the fact of the monster, or, demon, or whatever you want to call it. This thing, I mean, the design of it, it was pretty much invisible, but it's only visible to anyone who was infected by it. What I loved was the fact that it was not subtle. It was shape-shifting. Sometimes it could be a normal-looking person, sometimes it could be just a completely naked individual. But that's what was messed up about it, was the fact that it was not trying to be, just trying to disguise itself. It was actually going about its other victims, and that's what was kind of scary. And the fact that this creature just keeps walking towards you and it doesn't stop. I know a lot of scary movies how do they catch up to him? But this thing never stops. Like, no matter how far you go from it, no matter how, how far you drive, it will constantly keep following you. It'll just keep going until you're dead or you kill it somehow. And yeah, the movie was kind of slow, but it really worked for the pacing. It really did show, the feeling of how these characters were going through. And I really did. It was a nice treat and surprise to go see It Follows in theaters. Number 6, Spectre. This was far more like a James Bond movie than Skyfall was. I mean, Skyfall was being more like the Bourne movies than, Spectre. Well, I mean, I know some people are like, oh, but Skyfall's different. And, it was a Bond movie. Yeah, I know it's a Bond movie, but I'm saying that Spectre, one of the reasons why I like Spectre more was that it was more like a Bond movie. All I'm saying is that James Bond should be James Bond and Jason Bourne should be Jason Bourne. Don't make James Bond something he's not just because, something might be popular at some point in time. But back to what I was saying, why this was more of a Bond movie than Skyfall, was that the Bond girls were much better. I mean, Skyfall only had like one Bond girl and she only had like 15 minutes of screen time before getting killed like halfway through. And I know that's kind of a spoiler, but it's just halfway and it doesn't really give away anything big. But the actress they had, Leah Seydoux, or Leah Seydoux, I think that might be her name. She was good in it too. I think I've seen her maybe a couple of movies, but in like minor roles, but she was good. Her and Daniel Craig had pretty good chemistry. Another thing I really liked character-wise was the villain. Although, yeah, he didn't have much screen time, but Christoph Waltz was born to be a Bond villain. And I just loved it every time he was on screen, because he was easily the one that really was kind of chewing up the scenery, but also really, you could not, look away from him. He had that much of presence. And that's why I loved he was more like a classic old Bond villain again. The effects were pretty good too. Directing like the opening shot in Mexico City was awesome. I loved it. It was like a pretty much long continuous take shot. Pretty good. But also, there was some funny stuff that actually made me laugh. It wasn't like campy, like you were rolling your eyes like Die Another Day, but it was the right amount, and it was definitely welcome by this point in time.